Well, it's election season, so time for more candidate conversations. This time I'm talking with Dave Daggett. He's running for the House of Representatives in the 35th District. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Nice to meet you here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks
Thank you.
for coming in and talking with me a little bit. First things first, tell me why you want to go to Olympia.
Well, I became very active in politics in about the last year and a half. And, to be honest, I was wanting to support a candidate, but nobody was stepping up to run against the Republican incumbent. And so I put my name in the hat, and I've been getting more and more engaged in this.
The 35th District is a large district, goes from way north near Bremerton, south towards Rochester, and all points in between. There's some large population bases like Shelton, where you live. And how are you able to, or how will you be able to not only take the things you hear from the folks in the Shelton area who may stop you on the street, but then also bring in the ideas from folks all throughout the 35th?
Well, I've been doing a lot of doorbelling, so I get a perspective across the whole district here, from Bremerton down to almost Centralia.
Yeah.
And listening to folks, both Democrat and Republican. I'm a Democrat. Used to be a Republican once upon a time, and then back in the Reagan days, and then switched to independent, and now Democrat the last year and a half. So I get a good feel for both sides. I think I can work across the aisle on both sides as well. And I'd like to leverage my experience that I had with Boeing. I was a technical fellow there for most of my career. Before that, I worked in several other industries in engineering and was a teacher at one time. So I know what the teachers are going through at the moment as well. And so, it was my job to kind of be the idea man at Boeing for new aircraft and new aircraft technology, as well as future designs or concept designs. So since I retired, looking to give back to the community. I love our community here, and I'm hoping to be able to apply some of those skills to see if we can re-energize the 35th District here.
What was it about a year and a half ago that made you switch to Democrat?
Okay, I'll say it. It was Trump.
Okay.
But like I said, I was a Republican once back in the Reagan days. And, I worked on their Star Wars program there. And I think I did pretty well. A rocket scientist working on the Star Wars. Well, it was the kinetic energy weapon is what I was working on at the time. And taxes were low. And so I did really well. But I don't think a lot of other people did really well. And so I started shifting my views, especially when I saw afterwards that our national debt just really took off at that point, and also income inequality really took off at that point. And so that's when I became an independent. And then when I started seeing the same policies being applied, supply-side economics, or some people call it trickle-down economics, when I started seeing those being applied again, I thought, didn't we learn our lesson back then? We can anticipate to see a big deficit and more income inequality. And so I want to fight back against that. And that's why I changed parties.
When you get to Olympia, if you're voted in this November, you'll be just one of a handful of votes. How are you going to be able to explain to the folks in your party and across the aisle that what's good for the 35th is good for the whole state?
Well, you can't take politics from, say, Seattle and plop it in the rural area. It just doesn't work that way. And so I'm not sure that I can really say that what's good for the 35th is what's good for the rest of the state. And so, for instance, like I'm told more of our dollars, our transportation dollars, go out of the county instead of coming back in. And so I want to work to try and bring more dollars back than is going out. So I want to leverage, we used to use that term a lot in Boeing. I want to leverage the government in order to turn things around here in the 35th and make it better and lower property taxes and make a fair tax base and protect our health care. I guess that might be one area that would be similar across the state. I want to protect our health care. We've seen that there's a new Okay, I'm being partisan. A new Republican proposal for a $537 billion cut to Medicare. And at the same time, they're proposing another $100 billion cut for capital gains that would really affect the 1%, or that's people that are making more than $670,000 a year. I just think that's wrong. It needs to go the other way.
What are some bills that you would like to sponsor? Sounds like you have a few ideas already. Or what are the types of bills that you would be comfortable co-sponsoring?
So, I think as a representative, it's not my job to have all of the ideas. My job is to represent people. And so I want to get a better feel for what people want here. When I visited our representatives, I go away feeling like they just don't really hear me, or they have their preconceived ideas. So one thing I would like to do is, there's this thing called SurveyMonkey that a lot of businesses use to get a feel for what their customers want. So why couldn't we have like a political version of that, to where registered voters would be able to log in and we could have like an instant survey of what people think. And that way, I think we could get some bills that would be representative of what people actually want. So I'm looking forward to representing people and not necessarily just doing it what I want. I'll bring some ideas and run it by people and see what they think.
The numbers between the Democrats and the Republicans are razor thin, both in the House and the Senate. The shifts can happen pretty much at any time, even if there's retirements or the like. We've seen, because of this, special session after special session, the length of the time that folks are in Olympia is longer and longer. What can be done to fix that, to get you in and out in the allotted time?
Yeah, that would be great if we could get people to talk across the aisle, isn't it? And everybody says that. That was one of our sayings at Boeing. My mentor and role model at the time was Alan Mullally, and his saying was "working together." That's what the company was about. And so one of my jobs there was to work across many different specialties. So we'd have groups of people. There would be like the landing gear group, and they had this technology they wanted to put on the airplane and spend a lot of money, and it would make the best landing gear ever. And you'd have the wing group, and same story there. And you'd have the tail group, and so in our concept group, would have to kind of work between all these different groups and come to an agreement on what technologies would best work on the airplane. And so I've got a history of working with many different groups, and yeah, okay, I'll say it, across the aisle. Like I said earlier, I think I understand the conservative side as well as the progressive side, and so I'm not afraid to talk to the liberals. I think some of our current representatives are. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, that's a Seattle liberal. Well, we're all people here. We all want the best for our government. We just have little different ideas on how to accomplish that.
How do you understand the working environment to be in Olympia, from the governorship down to the daily rank and file throughout the different departments? Is it? Are you hearing that it is a positive work environment, or are there ways that you think that you could, being in the House, make those better?
Well, I've talked to several representatives that are currently working, and they say it's a challenging job, but they enjoy it, and I think the people that enjoy it the most are those that are not seeking to make a name for themselves or a career for it, but just interested in helping the people out, And so, kind of like John McCain, I look forward to working across the aisle on both sides. I think he did, and I think he was a great politician, and would like to see us getting along in the state, as well as the U.S. government in Washington, the other Washington, D.C. I've talked with a few people that said actually the state legislature is a better place or more fulfilling to work than in Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is just gridlock. They can't get anything done. They're always arguing, but you can get something done in the state. So I'm looking forward to that.
What are the types of committees you'd like to be put on?
Well, I'm an engineer, or I was a technical fellow, and so I like the techie type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would enjoy being on energy and maybe environment as well, things that would apply to my engineering background.
What was the first experience in your life when you realized you had the power to do something meaningful?
I guess, yeah, it was a an episode about 10 years ago. There was this fellow named Richard Branson. He owns airline and record companies,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. And he just came out and said, I'm going to fly an airplane on biofuel. And I thought, well, that's kind of a silly idea. Why would you want to do that? It's so much easier to put biofuel in a car. And then I realized, oh, he wants to start an industry of having a low pollution aviation jet fuel. And so he didn't have any plans of how he was going to do this, didn't know if it was technically feasible or not. And I thought, this might be a good thing for Boeing to do. So I talked to my superiors, and they had the same response. Well, that's a silly idea. But at the time, Branson was thinking about buying a bunch of airplanes. So I told my boss, all right, maybe silly, but he's the customer, and he wants to buy a lot of 787, so I think we should help him. So we helped him out. I started this program at Boeing on the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Program. We flew an airplane from London, Heathrow to Schiphol, Amsterdam on biofuel. It wasn't the best biofuel. We thought it'd be a one-time endeavor, but after it, a lot of our customers came back and said, oh, we want to do that too. And the military came, especially the Air Force, said, well, this has potential for a strategic fuel, homegrown type fuel. Just in case we get into another like Arab oil embargo of 73, we want to have a sustainable fuel. And so it developed into a big program where there's over a dozen airlines using it now. There's 4 airports in Europe that are using it. SeaTac says they want 20% of their fuel to come from renewable sources by 2020. And I thought, wow, that's, I made a difference. And so I'd like to try and do something like that for our district too. One idea that came to mind was we flew an airplane on wood chips to biofuel. Flew it from SeaTac to Washington, D.C., and this was actually after I retired, but they did a great job of developing the fuel and so forth. And so I thought, we've seen such a decrease in employment here in Shelton, and we have a lumber mill. It's now automated, and so it's a healthy business. They've reemployed all of the people that they had before the mill shut down, 270 some people, I think. Or maybe it's 250. They want to be at 270. Wouldn't it be cool if we could have a biorefinery here in town, and we could supply SeaTac with that 20% of the fuel? So, it's just one idea. And yeah, kind of going out on a limb, but so did Richard Branson. And look what happened. So I think we got to have a vision for what we're going to do here. And yeah, maybe, mushrooms and marijuana is okay for the first 5 years, but what do we do beyond that? And so we got to start thinking out of the box and have some grander visions if we're going to raise our economic prosperity here and get unemployment down even further and reduce our homelessness and highest poverty rate in the Puget Sound.
Take the last couple minutes here looking at that camera and tell the voters why they should send you to Olympia this November.
Well, I guess from a populist standpoint, I want to reduce your property taxes. And yeah, a lot of politicians say that, but I would like to do it without cutting school funding. So how do we do that and do it in a fair manner? And so one idea, when you consider that Washington State has one of the most regressive tax systems, meaning the poor pay more as a percentage of their income than the rich do for taxes. How do we reverse that without an income tax? People don't like income taxes. And so how do we do that? And one way might be to have an excise tax on capital gains. An income tax is something you pay on your salary. An excise tax is something when you sell something like stocks that you would pay a portion of that. And so if we set an excise tax that affects the 1%, or those making $670,000 a year, and have that money directed towards schools, it will result in a property tax decrease for most of us. It will enable a stable funding mechanism for schools, and it will take a first step towards being a more equitable tax structure here in Washington State by having those people that make $670,000 help pay for education. So that would be one of the reasons why you should put me in the legislature.
He is running again for the 35th District in the Legislative District. It's Dave Daggett. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Glad to be here.